You need winners? Let the Sports Advisor show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a former sports reporter and contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the sports betting industry. Together, they are the Sports Advisors, your number one source for winners.
Week 9 of the NFL season is upon us, and I've got to say, it is a lousy slate of games. But we're here to break them down anyway. We've got 5 of the best games to talk about. Hi, everyone. Al DeMarco here, along with Steve Budin. And Steve, listen, it doesn't matter whether they're good games or not. It's a 50-50 betting proposition as long as you've got the winning side.
Yeah, and if you bet enough money on a game, Al, it's virtually the Super Bowl every single week. And if you don't bet enough money on a game, well, it's no fun anyway. So, there you have my opinion on good games and bad games.
Well, let's start with one which, maybe would have had some promise at the start of the season. If you bought into the hard knocks hype, as I always call it, everybody thought this was going to be the Detroit Lions year. Dan Campbell talked a good game. You had Aaron Rodgers, the big-time MVP, coming back. And instead, what you have are 2 teams that really suck, the Packers and the Lions. You got the Packers, who, of course, come in here with a miserable record. You got the Lions, who, as it stands right now, have 2 of the top 14 picks in the NFL if the season was to end today, including the number 1 choice. And all they really should be concerned with in Detroit is, they should hold that number 1 choice because maybe they could get Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud and have a real quarterback. But they got to play the game anyway, and right now Green Bay is a 3-point choice coming off that loss at Buffalo. Somebody's got to win it. But then again, you never know. Could be another tie.
Yeah, this is like comparing my ex-girlfriend to my ex-wife and who I like worse. And I don't know, we can save that for another show and another time. Look, Detroit showed flashes. They had Miami last week up 14-0 to start the game. It was 27-17 at the half. And, Goff had drove the Lions for scores in all 5 of the first half possessions and then none in the second half. Miami pitched a shutout in the second half and came back and actually won that game. And my analysis is simple. Miami, good. Detroit, bad. Green Bay, a double-digit underdog, barely covered at Buffalo. You mentioned it. That made it 4 straight losses for them. And my analysis was Buffalo, great. Green Bay, bad. So this game is bad versus bad. And like I said in the beginning, it's like my ex-wife and my ex-girlfriend. So who's worse? Green Bay is worse. That's the team I've paid the most alimony to. I'm going with Detroit in this one.
Yeah, the sad part about the Packers this season is that their anemic offense, which who would have thought I'd be using that phrase when you've got Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. But that offense, which is averaging just 17.5 points during the 4-game losing streak, is really overshadowing a very good defensive effort by that team. Packers allowing just 21.6 points a game, which, of course, is a hell of a lot better than Detroit because Lions coming in here allowing a league worst 32.1 points, a league worst 421 yards a game. So what does Dan Campbell do? He fires not their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, but their defensive backs coach. I don't quite understand the logic there, especially since the Lions have played 8 different combinations of cornerbacks and safeties this season because of injuries and pathetic play. Yeah, so don't get rid of the defensive coordinator this week. Let's just throw the secondary coach under the bus. Yeah. It's like the secondary, of course, is giving up, that 155 yards a game on the ground, to the 3rd most in the league and 5.1 yards per carry. And I think ultimately that's going to be their downfall here. Packers are averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Aaron Jones coming off that 20 carry, 143-yard game against the Bills on Sunday night. In fact, against Buffalo on the road, the Packers ran for 208 yards, averaged nearly 7 yards a carry. And I believe ultimately that is going to be the Packers' best chance to snap their losing streak here. To effectively run the ball, the Lions have shown glimpses of offensive potential. Play keep away, keep the Lions off the field as much as possible. The Packers are who they are. They're not going to be able to put a lot of points on the board because Aaron Rodgers simply doesn't have many good receivers. So in this particular spot, I'm going to side the other way and go with the Packers and their defense to keep the Lions offense in check and go with the Packers with the ball control offense. The line is 3. I'm going to go head down and buy the half point. I'm sure you're going to go the other way and buy that half point the other way with the Lions. And again, this definitely qualifies as my Who Cares game of the week. Let me just remind everybody.
Got that out of the way early.
Well, listen, there were so many candidates for the Who Cares game of the week. We could have had 13 of them, but there were a couple teams having a bye week, so I had to eliminate them automatically. But listen, let me also remind everybody that if you want to make sure that you never miss a show and the Who Cares game of the week, subscribe to the channel. You can see that cute little button down in the lower corner, and that way you'll know when Steve and I have our NFL Countdown to Kickoff program, and also the college football preview show that I do with Rick Torino. And if you happen to catch us on the podcast, if you want to download it, in case you don't have a chance to watch our lovely faces, you can always do so. The podcasts are available on numerous networks like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Stitcher, elsewhere. So you can download us and take us on the go on the podcast as well. Steve, the next game has a little more potential because who would have guessed that the Minnesota Vikings would be a playoff contender at this stage of the season, 6-1 start going against Washington. The Commanders have reeled off 3 straight wins. Washington is a 3.5-point home puppy in this one. Which side do you have here?
Yeah, I knew you would pick this game and not let me off the hook on this one. I did come on last week and proclaim that Minnesota was a fake. And look, I still don't think they're as good as their record. I'm beating Arizona, a team that doesn't start playing until the second half every week. Doesn't necessarily prove me wrong. Washington, look, they're not an elite team by any measure. They're gritty, they're resilient, but nowhere near great, let alone elite. Carson Wentz went out and they tightened their belt and dug in. They started fighting for games. They're playing well without Wentz. They're competitive. Minnie, I don't know, Al, something really bothers me about them. Maybe it's the easy schedule. Maybe it's the fact that even though they're 6-1 straight up, they're 3-4 against the spread. Maybe it's that most of their wins came by single-digit margins. I don't know, but I can tell you my gut says don't trust this Minnesota team. I think scoring in this game will not come as easy as many might think. I'm going to stay off the side completely because I'm a little bit off on both of these teams. And I'm going to bet the under. I think under the posted total is the way to go here.
Okay, 43.5 points. Yeah, I could certainly see there, especially since the Commanders, their defense has really played well here. Over the last 3 games, they have not allowed more than 21 points. And the Vikings sometimes do show up defensively, but more often than not, they don't. So, Mets are Mets. I like Minnesota here. I'm willing to give the Vikings the benefit of doubt. They certainly have played well. And what I like is the fact that in years past, you could always knock Kirk Cousins, and I have no problem with that. But he actually has played damn well this year, and he certainly has the offensive firepower, not only at wide receiver, but with Dalvin Cook. So I'm going to go with Minnesota because I'm just not sure with Washington beating 3 straight bad teams that qualifies them for anything more than not being the Who Cares game of the week candidate. Right. So I'm going to go with Minnesota here because, listen, you've won 5 straight games. You managed to outscore Arizona at home last week, 34-26, and laying 3.5. I'm going to give the Vikings a shot here. And again, I'm going to buy down the half point in this spot, which brings us to the game between Buffalo and the New York Jets. And it gives me a chance to talk about one of my favorite subjects, the value in buying the half point. And it came into play again, Steve, last Sunday night when Buffalo was a 10.5-point favorite all week long, going into that game against the Green Bay Packers at home. I had the play on Buffalo minus 10.5. I told somebody or told all the clients at the site that this was one of those rare occasions where even at the number 10, which is the high limit of mine, where I always say that if the line crosses 3, 4, 6, 7, and sometimes 10, this was one of those rare occasions that to go ahead and buy down the number with Buffalo laying 10.5, buy down the half point on that particular game with Buffalo. And of course, with Josh Allen throwing 2 costly fourth quarter interceptions, including that really big killer in the red zone where they're knocking on the door to get another score that would have put the game even further out of reach and definitely would have ensured the cover. Well, Green Bay, I just had a bad feeling because with Aaron Rodgers, still, I got to give him some respect. I just had a bad feeling, especially with the Bills coming off the bye. What did it cost me? Another 20 cents. So instead of laying $1.10, I'm laying $1.30. It's like betting $1.30 favorite in baseball. But there were a few handicappers at sportsadvisors.com who did not do so and had the Bills and consequently walked away with a loss. I just don't understand the logic here. But again, you are the guy that created the offshore sportsbook betting industry, a former bookmaker, your father, a bookmaker as well. We've talked about this in our 20-some years of being in this business together, doing these videos, but we might as well talk about it again, the value of buying the half point in certain situations, buying it down on a chalk, buying it up on a pup.
Well, you mentioned the number 10, which is actually important because outside of 3 and 4, 3 being the most popular outcome in games, 4 being next, 10 is before 7 and before 6. So it's 3, 4, and 10 with that field goal and touchdown, combination ratio, very likely outcomes in games, that 10-point margin. So buying down off of 10 is actually intuitive and smart. And but the other thing we talk about too is when you have certain hot teams and teams that the public is in love with, you want to bet those games early and not wait till the end because that line can move, outside normally of your favor. So that's what happened here. If you bet that game at the right time, you got 10.5. As it got close to to the start time of the game, in some places that game went to 11. And if you're not one of these guys that do another thing like me and you also recommend is shop lines and have multiple outlets to get your lines at, you might have been forced into an 11 where that half a point buy would not help you. So getting the game early, having multiple places, and buying down off of that 10 number, all 3 great strategies for gamblers and subjects that we've talked about, like you said, for the last 20 years. If you implemented all of those things, well, then you got the push, which our friend Anthony used to say is like kissing your sister. So congratulations.
Listen, it's we don't often have strategies that we can employ to hedge the odds in our favor. And I've often said with buying that half point, either up or down, it's the thing that is, for me, has turned more pushes into wins, more losses into pushes, and any other thing that gives me an advantage over the odds makers. And to amplify what you just said, the most simple thing in the world is you bet the favorites early, you bet the underdogs late. It's basic common sense because sometimes the public is just stupid. And in this day and age, because let's face it, this isn't like 20 years ago when you were calling Danny the bookie down the street and you had to wait till he opened up shop at 11:30 or 11:45 on Sunday morning to take your wagers. The industry has changed. Now you just pick up your phone on Tuesday night, on Monday morning, you can bet the Sunday games. I mean, the lines are there waiting for you. It's not like the old days. You definitely bet the favorites early, the underdogs late, 99.9% of the time. So now we have the Bills are a 12.5-point choice against your Jets. No, interesting number. I thought the Bills came out. Although they won the game, I thought they were flat. And that's also what worried me last week when they were taking on the Packers at home. They were coming off a bye. Even though they had great numbers off a bye, I thought still they were a little flat. I expect a much better effort here against the Jets on the road.
Yeah, and they're a team that even when they're flat can win by double digits. Look, obviously, at this big spread, it's not about winning the game. It's about covering the line. You know, the Bills, we know they're going to win the game. I know it. You know it. The Jet fans know it. And the Bills own the Jets. They've won 4 straight, 7 out of the last 10. And just in case you think home field advantage matters, the Bills have also won 4 straight at MetLife Stadium. So throw that out the window. When we talk about covering the spread, still good, but not nearly as dominant. They're just 6-4 against the Vegas numbers are the Bills in the last 10. Jets had a hot start to the season, came to an end last week as I predicted, as New England bested them in New York. Zach Wilson, 3 interceptions, less than 50% completion ratio. He didn't look good. If the Jets can score just a few times in this game, Al, which is an if, it's going to go way over the total. I'd bet the over in this one. Best shot to get the money. The Bills are going to ring the register, like you said, all day long, and I'll take over the posted total here.
That's interesting. 47.5 going over. I could see that. And I like Buffalo too. I have no qualms with laying the points with Buffalo in this one. As I said, Josh Allen wasn't particularly sharp with the 2 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, but only 13 for 25, 218 yards against the Packers. I don't think he's going to have any problem with this Jets defense. And in that Jets 22-17 loss to the Patriots, as you said, Zach Wilson had a cheap 355 yards, but those 3 turnovers, that's why one reason the 4-game win streak stopped. The other reason is you saw minus Breece Hall, the rookie running back who had the season-ending injury. That was their first game without him. Only 51 yards rushing on 15 carries. And also, the pass-run distribution was all out of whack. 43 passes, 15 rushing attempts. That's not going to work against the Buffalo Bills. And I think Buffalo will just have their way. And I think this could be one of those ugly 37-13 games, which again plays into your over scenario and also would give you the Bills covering as well. Next game, Arizona and Seattle. You did not have faith in my play on Geno Smith and the Seahawks. And I will be the first to say that I was down on Geno and the Seahawks early this season, but I am drinking the Kool-Aid here the past 3 weeks on the Seahawks, starting with their win over Arizona back at home on October 16th, 19-9, which was their best defensive effort on the season. I can tell you right now, Steve, before I ask you for your pick, I'm going to keep riding the Seahawks until something disastrous happens, and I have no qualms with taking Seattle plus the 1.5 here as the road puppy.
Yeah, nobody more surprised than me, Al, that Geno Smith and the boys are division leaders. I mean, and for me, you got to give a lot of credit to Petey Carroll. What a job. You know, overcame losing Russell Wilson to Denver, and he lost Rashad Penny, you know, and let's look at Geno Smith's numbers while we're here. 73% completions, 1,924 yards passing, 13-3, touchdown to interception ratio, not even halfway through the season yet. These teams played 3 weeks ago. Seattle won by 10 points, 19-9. And look, when teams show you who they are, believe them. Arizona doesn't usually start playing until late in the second quarter. That's who they are. For that reason, I'd bet Seattle in the first quarter and Seattle in the game. At the end of the day, even if you think these teams are evenly matched, talent-wise, I take Petey Carroll over Cliff Kingsbury any day of the week. So give me Seattle in the first quarter and Seattle in the game.
Yeah, I think I read something when handicapping this game that Cliff Kingsbury, the Cardinals are 7-19. I think, 7-19 in his last 25 games straight up after a 7-0 start. And Arizona has played better the last 2 weeks since that loss in Seattle, since DeAndre Hopkins has returned. 22 catches in the 27 times he's been targeted for 262 yards and a touchdown. The results, the Cardinals beat New Orleans, outscored them 42-34 at home, but then they lost 34-26 at Minnesota. So the offense has certainly been more productive, but it's still an offense that's out of balance. They have not been able to really run the ball with consistency or success this season. And now basically Kyler Murray has just found DeAndre Hopkins and not much else. Even though he has other weapons with Zach Ertz, et cetera, it's really just been the Murray and Hopkins show the past 2 weeks. I like the way the Seattle defense has been playing. They've been getting great pass rush numbers here. After the first 5 games, they only had 8 sacks. Now they have 14 in the past 3. And the offense is humming. Not only Geno Smith, but, you mentioned Penny when he went out with the season-ending injury. The rookie out of Michigan State, Kenneth Walker III, came right in. His first start was against Arizona, and in 3 games starting, 315 rushing yards, 5.1 yards per carry. And that's why I'm going to go with Arizona. I loved them last week against the New York Giants. Ended the Giants winning streak with the 27-13 victory, and I'm going to go with Seattle once more here. Before we get to our final game, which may be possibly one of the more interesting and best games on the Sunday slate, let's remind everybody, Steve, of the 1-day free all-access pass, where they can get all the plays of all the handicappers, including your red-hot Baltimore crew, which won once again last Sunday. Absolutely free with no strings attached, and it's been something we've been doing for near 22 years and we're the only folks in this entire industry that can and will do it.
Well, it's hard to believe if you're watching our show all season long that you haven't taken advantage of this yet. But maybe there's a few of you out there that still haven't done it, that still haven't come to the site, clicked on the big button that says free all access pass, and gotten yourself every single handicapper on the site absolutely free. If you bought them individually, it's more than $1,000 worth of action. You get to see exactly what paying customers see, and you can understand before you have to stick your hand in your pocket what you're getting yourself into. We do this only because we know and we're confident that once you see what's behind the magic door, that you're going to keep coming back and you're going to love our product. And that's why we have customers that have been buying picks from us for 15 years. That's huge in our industry, where customers don't usually stick around 15 minutes.
And guys, the only way you lose is if you don't take advantage of the offer. Remember, depending on the day, you get to choose the day. You get the Saturday plays, which means you get Rick Torino's potentially his 9th straight Saturday college football winner. Some days you also get a bonus day, depending on the day you choose. So check it out, the 1-day free all-access pass over at thesportsadvisors.com. Kansas City is a 12.5-point favorite at home against Tennessee. The big question here as we do this show on Wednesday morning is we don't know who is going to be quarterbacking for the Titans. It could be Ryan Tannehill, who missed last week's game, or it could be the rookie Malik Willis. I think that uncertainty is baked into this line. I think if we knew definitively whether it was going to be Ryan Tannehill, this number is going to drop. So it certainly could affect how you play this game and when you play this game, obviously.
Yeah, I agree. And who's going to have, the privilege of handing the ball off to Henry? Because that's what the Tennessee Titans do now, pretty much on every play. Look, every investment commercial on TV always has a disclaimer, Al. It says past performances are not always an indicator of future results. So while most gamblers are quick to point out that the Titans always give the Chief problems, that's true. It's not a big factor for me. This is not the same Titans that a year ago beat the Chiefs 27-3. And unfortunately, in many ways, it's not the same Chiefs either. They've had their moments, the Chiefs have this season. Looked like they were kind of coming back to be the old Chiefs, and that was always followed by some stale performances. So it seems like this season we can never know which KC team is actually going to show up. So might as well talk about what we do know. Tennessee, they've pretty much settled into handing the ball off to Henry as much as possible. So they're going to look to keep the game on the ground, shorten the game, keep the ball out of Mahomes' hands as much as they can. Chiefs at home, not so good. I mean, they've dropped 4 straight versus the line, and my gut says it's a little too risky to bet KC. Tennessee is on a 10-3 under run. I think the trend continues thanks to clock control, courtesy of Henry, and the ground game. Give me under the posted total. I'm going under in this one. A lot of totals for me this week, but I think that's because, the lines stink, the games stink. It's very hard sometimes, and you don't have to bet a side. You know what I mean? You can go look at a total and sometimes get a better value there. I think I've done that this week.
Yeah, 46.5 points. It's an interesting thought here because especially with Derrick Henry, should have a big game with Frank Clark, one of their better run stoppers, being suspended for Kansas City. That should make the running a little easier, although the Chiefs have been dynamite. I think they're number 3 in stopping the run this season in the NFL in terms of yards per carry yielded, and I think maybe only giving up about 92 yards per game. But again, to me, this game all comes down to who's starting at quarterback. Malik Willis proved that he's not ready. He's a rookie, unseasoned, needs another year of seasoning, period, after that poor performance last week where he was 6 for 10, 55 yards and an interception. He only threw one pass in the second half. And they won because they did give Derrick Henry the ball repeatedly. That's not going to work against Kansas City, Malik Willis as quarterback. Now, when Tennessee obliterated Kansas City last year, jumped out to the 27-0 lead, and just dominated the Chiefs, it was because Ryan Tannehill threw for 270 yards. But the asterisk next to that is that he completed 8 of those passes to A.J. Brown for 133 yards and a touchdown, and A.J. is now toiling with the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Tennessee passing attack has really struggled this year. Second time this year, Titans have been a double-digit underdog. First time, they went to Buffalo. Everybody thought that was going to be one of those great Bills-Titans rematch where Tennessee has always had the Bills' number, and Josh Allen threw for 317 yards and 4 touchdowns, and, Tennessee was outgained 187-414, and the Bills smoked them 41-7. I think the same thing happens here. Forget about the past. Doesn't apply here. I think Kansas City, just like they went to San Francisco a few weeks ago, dominates in this game. I don't care who is the quarterback. But again, you have to figure when you're going to play this game. Right now, 12.5 is the highest this number is going to go. I think if you like the Chiefs like I do, you wait and hope that an announcement later in the week is made, because we're doing this Wednesday morning again. And if Ryan Tannehill's announced, I think this number comes down, and the value is even better on Kansas City. Now, conversely, if you like Tennessee for some godforsaken reason, you bet the Titans right now, and you pray that, maybe it's not Malik Willis as your quarterback. And if it's Ryan Tannehill, you're going to get 12.5 points when you don't deserve to. But again, I like Kansas City in this game, but it's, it's certainly a weak slate. I would even consider taking Kansas City as a potential team in a teaser here, taking them down. But again, I would certainly wait, because I don't think this line is going any bigger because of the past history in this series. And this is where you take advantage of past results and how the public is often influenced. And as a smart gambler and a handicapper, you capitalize on that. So there you go. That takes care of this week's game, or this week's slate. Not a great one, but again, it's all 50-50 betting propositions. Somebody wins, somebody loses, and we can only hope that we're on the right side. So that's it. And again, subscribe to the channel to always be alerted. And remember, you can always catch us and download the podcast as well and take us on the go. So for Steve Budin, I am Al DeMarco, and we will catch you next time here with the Sports Advisors pregame show. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks, Al.